It's the state of the dungeon. It's a video that Rob does about his games. Yeah! Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, children of all ages, welcome to the Lair of Omnici. I'm Rob, and today I'm giving you my State of the Dungeon address. This is for the game that took place on the 1st of April, 2021. Yes, the April Fool's Day episode. I'm not going to lie, this is going to be the not safe for work version of this. I'm going to have to make two because some of the content is not appropriate for younger ears. Because things happened. Things happened. So the other one's going to be much shorter. So first of all, in this particular game, we're playing Dungeons and Dragons. The adventure is Castle Calwell and Beyond by Harry Knuckles. Who is a real person, by the way. It turns out actually takes credit for the book himself, although writing gaming stuff is not his main passion. But yeah, what a name to live under. But he's a real person, turns out. So investigative research. Also, we were missing two people. We were missing the players of our valiant elf and our not so valiant thief, which kind of lent a little bit of a pall to the proceedings, enthusiasm to drive forward into the dungeon and really make a lot of progress. So, instead, we kind of had a little bit more of a high-spirited approach to the game. I opened it up with a lengthy discussion about where the game was going. My intention as to the next game event that we're going to be doing is we're going to allow them to pick the game that they want to play from a choice that I'm going to give everybody. So they'll vote on it, and we'll play the game that they choose. That game will then be taken out of the rotation the next time I give them a choice. And then the game after that we're going to run, I'll just say it right now, is going to be Gooey Cube's The Darkest Dream. We're actually going into a campaign. Yes, it will involve pre-generated characters, but it'll be 5th edition D&D. It should be a lot of fun. They were excited to hear about this. After I showed them the stuff that comes in The Darkest Dream and what Gooey Cube is all about, they got really excited. And then I told them my little surprise that now I am actually hired to make a module for Gooey Cube, so I'm very excited about that, but more time to talk about that at a later time. We also found out that one of the players actually, if you knew her and you looked at her Facebook page, you know that she had received the D&D cookbook Hero's Feast, and that she'd been making some things out of there. Well, for us, she made iron rations from the book, which is, well, if you've ever had Chex Mix, you'd kind of be familiar with the idea. It's basically taking a lot of good things and just throwing them together in a mix. Unlike Chex Mix, though, the idea is not to blend everything as much. There's going to be some cross-flavoring and stuff, but this isn't going to be coated and drowned in another salt and seasoning mix. It's just taking a bunch of stuff together that doesn't spoil. You don't need to refrigerate it as much, and just kind of can tote it around and eat it bit by bit. It's a satisfying, complete meal. It involves a couple of types of Chex, mixed nuts, dried fruit, that in this case would be cherries, blueberries, apricots, and dates. Oh, very good. The nuts are your basic mix with some cashews, walnuts, pistachios, which are good, macadamia nuts, walnuts and almonds, and also some small turkey sticks, like little sausages, and some steak chunks, probably like a Jack Links or something, and all blended together, all mixed together. As I said, it isn't something that you'd want to grab a handful of and just nom. I picked. But again, if you want a little meat, there was a little meat in there. If you wanted a little fruit, something sweet, there was the fruit, which is not so sweet that it caused me problems. It's still not something I wanted to, just go completely crazy on, but it was really good. And it was really sweet of her to do that, and we didn't ask, and we didn't set up a potluck, and very grateful for such things. So we had a fine feast together, which was nice. So that was pleasant. And she brought enough for everybody, more than enough. So we were talking as much as anything. It was fine spirits, but eventually we were there to role play. So everybody had their characters. We had the characters of Bella the halfling. We had Astrid the cleric, Marvin the magnificent, the magic user, and Rune the magic user. Quite a group. Quite a group. Honestly, if you would have set that up in, say, something like Final Fantasy, the idea of having the halfling is fairly close to a fighter, but maybe as kind of a thief. We'll say a fighter, and then you'd have a white mage and 2 black mages. That would be a crazy group if they could survive long enough to get powerful. And very much the case here. And their magics together can put down a lot of threats, and yeah. And if the cleric can get some healing in, it's going to be pretty solid. So anyhow, they had just gotten back from their successful completion of their mission to Castle Caldwell. They had cleared it out. They had gone back to Clinton Caldwell, the master merchant, and reported, and they were paid. Their taxes were covered by Caldwell, and he had to choke on his own tongue as he had to pay the reeve for all the taxes on what they had found, which was thousands and thousands of silver and copper, which wasn't a king's ransom or anything, but was more than enough to buy everything in the player's handbook. If anybody needed the best armor that's available right now, plate mail and a shield and a good weapon, they can get it. So they have enough money to take care of their want, and a little bit on top so that they could start getting a couple of healing potions in reserve and things like that. So I gave them their own head a lot. The town is relatively small. There's a few things. They're building a henchman's guild, basically for the labor, but also so that adventurers can get understudies, because I understand that they kind of need that. And an armor, so that if they want something custom made or they have designs on something cool, they can get that too. And that's being fronted by Caldwell, who really wants to turn this town into something special with his castle only a little ways away. So it's kind of important for him to build up his base. So I told them, after they got their chance to do what they want, for the most part it's like, oh, I want to throw myself into training. Okay. I want to throw daggers at trees. Okay. I'd like to practice getting in and out of my new armor. That's something that's good to know. Okay, good. I want to start writing spells in my book. Do you have the spell Read Magic? No. You need it to be able to translate the scroll so that you can copy it into your spell book. Aha! Dungeons and Dragons rules. And he's like, oh, crap. So I have to memorize Read Magic to learn a new spell? Yep. Oh, crap. But they do. That's how it went. So they had to put off. They had bought a few scrolls. I allowed them the session before. They bought some things. Because I really hadn't thought about turning it into a shopping night. I really probably should have. And in fact, I kind of regret not having them divvy up the treasure, figuring out, not allowing them to convert their stuff into gold, figuring out the gold value and giving them that experience rather than a flat amount. I do have regrets for doing that. So be it. So they said it is kind of customary when the conquering adventurers come back from a dungeon that they go to the tavern and enjoy themselves, blow off some steam. Marvin the Magnificent was all over that. Marvin the Magnificent talks about himself in the third person all the time. It's kind of annoying for some people, and NPCs are like, nobody else does this. We don't know why you do it. You are weird. But he does it. And so he ordered himself a feast for one. Now, I decided that this town was purposefully pretty dull. I don't want them staying there and enjoying themselves in this town tremendously. I want them to get out. Just do what they need to do with Caldwell, and then they'd be able to move on. It's kind of a central theme in my hub towns, is usually the idea is that the adventure is out there, and this town is just there to serve your needs, someplace you can come back to, but not something I want you to spend a lot of time in. There are bigger cities if I'm going to run a city adventure, but your hub town, I'd never really want to be all that large under most circumstances. And this one isn't. Just enough to have their basic needs met. So I do, however, think that it's important to have sessions be memorable. And so I decided that Marvin would be dealing with the barmaid and serving girl. And as an odd quirk of character, I decided that she was the kind who enjoyed the company of men. And in her day, she was quite the looker. She was very popular with a lot of the customers. But she's been doing this for a long time. Now that she's been in the trade for 30 years and been in more than a few bar fights, she's missing some teeth, and her looks have kind of left her, but she still tries. It's one of those things to make an NPC that everybody can just kind of have some fun with, teasing each other with her without doing anything serious. Well, so Marvin, she was trying to climb all over him a little bit, trying to, get him to, purchase some favors. And Marvin is oblivious, because Marvin does not know anything about society outside of his dedication to magic. So he just I just want food, I want drink, you're scaring me. So he asked for alcohol to drink, which was interesting. Beer or wine would produce beer or wine. Their alcohol is actually a distilled spirit. It's like grain alcohol. It's not tasty. It's clear. It's very strong smelling. You can take paint off with it. It's very good for cleaning armor and desmudging weapons and stuff. But he decided he paid for it. He was going to drink this stuff. So he made a roll against saving throw against poison and failed. So he was starting to get inebriated. The rest of the group came in. Asfrid got a little personal time with the High Clerist. He told her that he had these visions, that there was a darkness that was rising up and she should be very careful. And if she was going out away from the temple at night, she should always make sure she has her mace or her hammer at hand in case anybody tries to, cross into sacred grounds. So absolutely. She's more than ready to defend herself if she needs to. Of course, as a young cleric, everybody is really, really rooting for her because she has the potential to be able to be a great healer and do other things for the light and for the people. But at first level, she's young and vulnerable, so they're, very cautious for her. So he gave her some good advice, and she set off in good spirits. Bella decided she was just going to get out of all of the panoply of being an adventurer. She got out of the armor. She put the weapons away, and she just got a nice frock and went out. Took some money along and went out. Asfrid saw Marvin, who was waving excitedly at her. She came over and she started helping herself to his food, which he had way more. I love lavishing on descriptions of tavern food. Food is a passion of mine anyhow. It kind of wounds me when people go someplace exotic and I can't do justice to it. Like role-playing in the Middle East. It's like I'm not real familiar with Middle Eastern food, so... But I can talk about tavern stew and all the stuff that goes into it to make it delicious. And a fresh, crusty loaf of bread, the top's been sliced off and creamy butter's been smeared on it with a drizzle of honey, and just it's warm and fragrant, and you can feel that. I just love descriptions like that. Or a hunk of fragrant cheese that's had it's got a strong pungent aroma, but it's been seeded through with fresh wild berries. It's got both a tart flavor from the cheese, but it also has that sweetness that breaks it up. And I enjoy giving descriptions like that. So he got the treat of all of that. So the others were kind of nibbling around. Bella came in, she ordered her own food. The barmaid, whose name was Burside, did not pay any attention to the women because she knew she wasn't going to get the kind of tip she was looking for. So another lad came over and offered to help them. And Rune came in. Now, I thought Rune was probably a little bit more connected because, well, he carries himself like a wizard who takes himself seriously. Marvin comes off as kind of a bit spastic. It turns out Marvin's got an actually really high charisma, which I found out a little later. And it's like, oh, wow, okay, people genuinely like Marvin. Marvin is a pretty cool guy. So yeah, the barmaid was very interested in Marvin, but it was clear that Marvin was inexperienced. So obviously they hadn't met in that way. I'm guessing that Marvin didn't get out to the tavern very often, as his apprentice duties kept him away from that. Now he's no longer an apprentice; he is a medium. So that's what he's doing. Rune, however, deflected the attentions of Burside, who came over and again was making some overtures towards him. She wanted to show him her trick on how to get a cork out of a bottle without using her hands. And he instead paid her to go and perform that trick for Marvin, who had been drinking. Which she did to the shock and disgust of the cleric and the halfling. And even Rune was, well, all those players were giggling. Marvin was stunned. He didn't really understand what had just happened, because he is blissfully oblivious and now getting drunk. And she looked at him and said, "Oh, that's my magic spell. I can make corks disappear. I could show it to you if you're interested." And the player's like, "Oh God, why did she have to express it like that? It's Marvin. Yes, I want to learn your spell. Teach me your spell. All of it." Oh, everybody had a good laugh. I mean, he couldn't, the player himself could hardly stop laughing. At the same time, he's like, oh my gosh, what are they getting him into? The others were just like, this has to happen. This has to happen. So they were all, just dying of laughter. And sure enough, after he was finished eating, Bursai kind of took him off to teach him the spell, took him off into a private room. Things happened, and I just had to make a Constitution roll. And he rolled well. So after things had progressed, he had a moment of clarity. All of a sudden, even though his extremities were still a little tingly and numb, his brain suddenly snapped out of the effects of the fog and he just realized what he had just gotten done doing. And he just kind of snapped a little bit, and he just dropped his robes back down, turned and made a beeline out. All told, he was only in there for 5 minutes. Young man. And he bolted out of the place. Ran back to the tower. So the others all had a good laugh at this, and they thought this was hilarious. And they all basically just kind of evened out the night. There were some under clerics who came in, not spellcasting, just the clergy of the Faith of the Light. They discussed dark portents and the fact that some people had been missing out in the hinterlands. A couple of shepherds, a couple of ranchers. But their flocks had been left alone, so clearly it wasn't a hungry beast that had done this. There's strange things going on. So they went to bed in the morning. Also, an interesting thing, the master of Rune and Marvin himself is a wizard who is not extraordinarily powerful, but he is 5th level. He can cast a fireball. That's kind of his trademark. He's grumpy and crotchety, but he drinks too much, and most adventuring groups are not interested in him because he's not reliable. He drinks while he adventures. And too many times he's been found just not competent to adventure with the rest of the group, so he doesn't get any action in adventuring. Well, he's stalking out of the castle as Rune, or the tower, as Rune is coming back and saying that... actually, no, that happened the next morning. Yes, next morning. Saying that Calwell had hired him to go and cast a knock spell on the enchanted door in the castle that they had found. They couldn't get through. So, all right, well, we know that's going on. So the group meets back up for a morning breakfast. So just some light food they picked up at the general store and went out to eat, to talk. Marvin, however, put all of his hair in front of him, put his hood over, stalked over to them, and said, "I thought you were my friends," in a really good heartbroken sound. And it was hilarious because he's no longer calling himself Marvin anymore. He's referring to himself as I. So he's knocked out of that for the time being. But he's sulking because he's not happy with that. And to be fair, there's good. That's perfectly fair. Perfectly fair. I think anytime it happens to characters, and this is not the first time I've seen that happen in a group, that's oftentimes a good icebreaker. You have something to have fun with, and if Marvin takes himself too seriously, he could get, draw the umbrage of people. No, he's one of the group. And he's despondent, but the rest of the group is talking, and then Master Calwell comes over, and he thanks them for their hard work and asks if they'd consider sticking around in the area because he'll probably have more work for them. He also tells them that, yes, I'm putting up the Henchman's Hall so that you can go and you can get some help when you need it on your adventures, and I'll have lots of labor around for the things that I need to have done. And also so that my people aren't running around with barrel lids and short swords, I'm having an armorer come so that I can constantly have a supply of skilled craftsmen who can outfit people who are doing things for me. They were pretty happy about that. Caldwell, for the most part, may come off as kind of gross and maybe even a little greedy, and a lot of people don't have a great opinion of him, but he's been a pretty solid employer for them so far. And the work that they've had to do hasn't been that terrible. Yes, 3 people died, but it'd be hard to pin Caldwell on all of that. So it's mostly very just inexperienced adventurers doing things. So while they're eating everything, they see the master leave. So he goes by carriage out to Castle Caldwell as he's going to break that door. The rest of the group, basically, they have the day off. So Marvin insists that he is not going to the tavern anymore. Can't face her, probably. And he doesn't want to be laughed at by the others, I'm sure. No problems there. But he and Rune go and immediately memorize Read Magic, and they both get a new spell into their spell books. Rune, I believe, has Charm Person now. Interesting. And Marvin took Read Languages. Also interesting. So, both of them are reserving spells that they'd like to put in their spell book, but if they need to cast them, they can, which is smart. And the group, gathers the things they need. In a glut of spending, Asford went out and bought a healing potion and a flask of holy water for everybody, because a lot of the portents coming up suggest that maybe there's going to be undead coming up in something they're going to next. So that night, the master comes back, and he is singed pretty badly. He said that he opened the door, and almost immediately he was met by a creature that popped out, reasoning that only an undead foul abomination would be in a locked room without any way in or out for whatever time, to the point that he could spring out at someone. He figured he was undead. The figure was. So he threw his fireball into a closed room. The backblast caught him full in the face. And that wasn't ideal. So he ran. He got out. And they came back after he had kind of regained himself to the point where he was able to travel, because he was pretty badly burned. But he reported back to Caldwell. The very next morning, again, nothing really happened that night. We were in a chatty mood, but wasn't moving the adventure very far. They were all met by a messenger who told them basically that Master Caldwell wanted to see them as soon as possible. He had another job. So they went to go see Caldwell, and Caldwell's like, all right, I I now have that door open. Clearly there is a crypt underneath my castle. I need it cleared out. If there's anything in there, it has to go away. I want you to have first dibs on that. They're like, okay. Now another thing the High Clerist had told Asfred was that he had summoned a Lightbringer. A Lightbringer is an Inquisitor of the Light. They go and they find evil and they snuff it out. They rarely heal. They're clerics, but they don't spend a lot of time worrying about healing people. They worry about punishing evil. So as a result, they're very martially minded, and most of their spells are offensive in nature or buffing. Not as much about healing. So if he's coming, it's serious business. And they were told that, yeah, there might be undead there. So this guy could be really good to have. But Caldwell didn't want to wait for him to show up. He was supposed to get there on that day, but he's like, if you guys want to go out early and start, rather than let this experienced cleric come in and steal all your thunder, you're welcome to it. I know you're competent, and you're not going to get in over your head, so if you want to go, help yourselves. So they did. They left. They had told the master where Caldwell's wine was, so that was all gone. So in the carriage ride, it was just a straightforward carriage ride. Their carriage was not attacked, which was nice. Now, they were afraid that the undead had boiled out of the crypt and had, possibly killed all the guards, because Clinton now has staffing there at the castle. He's having it clean. He's got guards to make sure monsters don't move back in. He doesn't want all the effort that the group took to clear it out to be in vain. So when they got there, there's a guard standing in front of the castle. He has chainmail. He's got a pole arm in his hands. He's a competent-looking guard. And they go in, they go to the door, and they see that there's a staircase going down. The group spends quite a while trying to figure out how they're going to position everybody. And there was a couple of things that they had to take into account. First of all, there's the 4 of them. But also, they hired 2 henchmen, basically. From the list of people there really weren't any magic users. There's really only going to be more magic users if something happens to another character and somebody rolls up another one. The master really only had 2 apprentices, Marvin and Rune. So, unless another Schrodinger's apprentice suddenly appears, that's it. Likewise, the elves that are there aren't there as adventurers, so they weren't able to hire an adventuring elf. There was a dwarf who they hired. His name is Bimley. And they found a thief. Definitely a thief. His name is Shadow Spawn, which is a callback to a previous character that I had played with in a game who was called Shadow Spawn, who himself was blatantly taken from the character Shadow Spawn in the excellent Robert Asprin curated collection of short stories, Thieves' World. I highly recommend people read that. It's great stuff. Little gritty, but it's some really good stuff. Just saying. Shadow Spawn is kind of a little bit of a joke, but he's, again, remembering that Marvin has been kind of treated kind of shabbily here, and he has a really good charisma. Shadow Spawn thinks the world of him, and is happy to be adventuring with Marvin, the Magnificent. Mage without equal. So, Marvin's feeling a little bit better with this guy around. He is a thief, and he will do thiefly things when told, but he won't volunteer his skills. Likewise, the dwarf will stand there and take a shot for somebody, but he's not going to really be interested in taking a lot of punishment, and he will use his skills when asked to, not any other time. Also, it's costing him 10 gold a day to hire Bimley, and 2 gold a day to hire Shadow Spawn. They're not offering shares, which probably is a lot more profitable, but they don't know what they're being hired for, so that's how it goes. So, at any rate, they have to figure out how the marching order, who to send down the stairs to see what's going on. And there were evidences of the fireball going off, and burn marks on the walls and ceiling and everything like that. So, the group went to the stairs to look down, and there was a short staircase, only 10 feet down, and it ended at a 5-foot by 5-foot landing. Nothing, no way out of there, just stopped. floor leveled. They asked Bimley to look down. He's like, well, outside of I can see a little bit of, cooler air rising up through the hidden trapdoor. Hidden trapdoor. Yeah, there's a hidden trapdoor there. So they opened that up, which opened rather easy. It was counterweighted, so even though it's a heavy stone door, they were able to open it. And saw that there's a shaft leading down. Not terribly far. Their light could reach the floor, but it still could be a lot harder to get up. So they dropped the torch down and found out it's only 10 feet down, or at from the bottom of the shaft to the floor is only 10 feet. So all told, it's 10 feet, 6 inches. And they heard, hey, what are you doing dropping torches down here? That's when they met the mysterious Tom. Tom was a guy who's just stuck down in the dungeon in the first room. He's like, I was teleported here by an accident, a mishap. He had a story how he got there. He's like, I've been surviving in this dungeon, trying to stay away from the madmen who are interested in killing me. Everybody I've met here is crazed. They all are just interested in just ripping into you and killing you. I've run away and kept away from them because they're mostly human and can't see in the dark. But between bugs and these crazed humans, it's just death down here. But if you're going to clear it out, I can give you some advice. When they met Tom looks a little bit like Marvin. He's tall and gangly, generally pleasant to look at, and he's wearing a blue robe with a hood. So they help Tom, they pull him up. Tom's like, thanks, I really got tired of being down there. It's really bright up here. They're like, yeah, well, we're not just going to give you the run of the place, but we're going to let you out of the castle. There was some debate whether or not they should hold him prisoner, because they don't know who he is. But no, they just opened the door, let him out. He was very grateful, very gracious, thanked them for letting him out, and out he went. So they went back in. Now they knew how to get down. So they put a spike into the floor, attached rope, dropped the rope down the hole, and climbed down. It's relatively straightforward work, nothing too complicated if they have a rope and they're just basically sliding down. Getting up quickly might be difficult if they have to run from anything. But they did find out that there was a room below that's empty, and then there is a long hallway that winds around with several doors, and most of them lead to madmen and monsters. So the group kind of knows what's coming up. They have some warning, as long as Tom was telling the truth. And he seemed to be. So the group stopped there after they explored the very first room. Maybe there wasn't a great deal of combat or anything, that's for sure. But the group now is in the dungeon, ready to go forward. And hopefully next time we'll have a full group so that we are able to continue onward. So yeah, as far as progress goes, not a great amount of progress. The group is now outfitted as well as they think they can be. Nobody thought to buy any iron spikes, though. So, and of course, we had the memorable moments. Lots of fun. This was the not safe for work version, though. I will be doing another much shorter one, which will cover all of the essentials, so that younger ears can hear it and not necessarily hear about questionable conduct that took place. But we had a lot of fun, and it was a good night all in all anyhow. So thank you very much for joining me. I'm Rob. This has been my State of the Dungeon address. Until next time, farewell.